And I want to begin by talking about a phrase that you have all said. You might not have said it in English, but you will have said it in whatever your language is, because everyone has said this. We start when we are children, we all say this. And to be honest, some of us still say it. Certainly if we don't say it, we still think it. And the phrase that I'm thinking about today is, life's not fair. It's not fair, is it? It's not fair. You're in that situation where you go to a kid and it's like, it's not fair. And we say to someone who's complaining to us, it's not fair, we say, well, life's not fair. I wish I could guarantee for you that life would always be fair, but it isn't. God never says that life on this earth is fair. Now, it's interesting, because in the long run, it's fair, because there will be a judgment day, and everything will be dealt with, and everything that's gone wrong will be put right, and everything every wrong deed will have consequences. So yes, in the long run, God is completely fair. But as we go through our lives, life isn't fair. It's funny, we say life's not fair, but there's only one time that we say it. We say life's not fair when we're getting the smaller piece of pie, when we get the raw end of the deal. You know, if my brothers and I were sharing out pieces of cake, and they got a big piece of cake, and I got a small piece of cake, I'd go, it's not fair! But if I got the big piece of cake, and they got the small piece of cake, funny enough, I never said it's not fair. I never minded when I was the one who was getting more. And it's funny how, you know, we, in this country, when we look at things, we say, it's not fair. There should be more justice. There should be a more even division of wealth. And then we conveniently forget that, for example, the average income in the UK is 80 times more than the average income in Afghanistan. And when we say we want, you know, redistribution of wealth and fairness of all that sort of thing, we don't say, so I'm going to give loads and loads of my money away to the people in Afghanistan, because that would be fair. But it's funny how our perspective of fairness really comes about when we think it's not being fair to us. When we're getting the better end of the deal, we say, thank you, God, that's a blessing, that's wonderful, thank you, Father. However, we look at life and instinctively we think, I wish it was fair, but it's not. The truth is, you cannot control what happens in life. We've been talking this year about the importance of going in the right direction, that by choosing a good direction, we are likely to end up in a good place. But that's a gradual thing. That's something that happens step by step. It doesn't mean that you're in control of everything that's happening on that journey. You're not in control of life. But you can control how you respond. And that is the key to what I'm talking about today. How do we respond to the fact that things happen in life? The things that make us want to say, it's not fair. How do we respond? Last week's talk was called responsibility. This week's talk is called responsibility. You have the ability to choose how you respond. Responsibility. The reason that I'm talking about this in this series called You're a Leader is that the way that you respond in a situation will have a massive impact on the way that you influence others. When we are responding in that difficulty, in that problem, in that hardship, in the face of aggression or anything else, how we respond in that moment has a more powerful impact than many other times when we wish to influence or show people a good example. The way that you respond influences those around you, especially members of your family. If you're doing the right thing, you impact the members of your family in a brilliant way. If you respond in a bad way, you impact the members of your family in a bad way through the example that you're setting. So today, responsibility. We're going to have a look at it from Matthew 25, verses 14 to 30. And this passage of scripture is sometimes called the parable of the talents. And when we say a talent, now in English, the word talent means, a gift, an ability, something like that. In the Bible, it does not remotely mean that. In the Bible, it is a measure of weight, and in particular, a certain amount of cash. And basically speaking, one talent was the equivalent of 20 years of labouring. So if you took the average daily wage of a labourer, it would take them 20 years before they had been paid 1 talent. So this is the parable of some big wadges of cash. So this is what happens. There is a rich man, a very, very rich man, and he entrusts his cash to 3 servants. So he's going to go away for a long, long time. And he says, while I'm away, I'm going to hand over this cash to you. It doesn't belong to you, but I want you to work with this cash so that when I come back, you will give me back my cash and anything extra. So that's what he says, and he's ready to go. And he gives one of them 5 bags, or 5 talents of money. He gives one of them 2 bags, and the third one, he gives only 1 bag. So they get different amounts. So my first question is that fair? Is that fair that one of them gets 5 bags, one of them gets 2 bags, one of them gets 1 bag? Because I can imagine the guy with 1 bag going, why do I only get 1 bag? Why have they got 5 bags? Why has he got 2 bags? Why, it's not fair. And you could look at that and say, well, that is a bit unfair, isn't it? Because, to be honest, he could have got 9 bags. I mean, there's only 8 bags there, but he could easily have got another bag. He could have just evenly distributed it out and got 3 bags to each person. You could say it's not fair. But you know what? It depends on your point of view. Because it says in verse 15, the reason why they got different amounts was because of their ability. The one who got 5 bags was more able than the one who had 2 bags, or even more so than the one who had 1 bag. So when this guy is looking about where he's going to put his money, he thinks the cleverest servant is the one I'm going to give most to. Now, is that fair that someone receives on the basis of how able they are to use what they've been given? I think you could argue that's fair. Frankly, I think you could argue that the rich man can do what he likes with his money. It's his money. He can do what he wants. You see, what is fair and what isn't fair often depends on perspective, which is why sometimes when we say, it's not fair, well, it all depends which way you look at it. Well, whether it's fair or not, it never happened, it's only a parable. Okay, Jesus is just trying to make a point, so don't get too hung up about was it fair or not. Let's move on. You've now got 3 people who are servants. The rich man has gone. The story now has 3 people. They have one situation, which is they have a big wad of cash. One of them's got 20 years worth of wages. One of them's got 40 years worth of wages. One of them's got 100 years worth of wages. But they've all got a shed load of cash, loads and loads of money. We have 3 people, one situation, but we have 2 different responses. What they do in that situation is different for the different people. So let's start with the man who's got 5 bags. The 5-bag man, he goes into business, he trades, he increases the money. In fact, he doubles the money. So by the time that the master comes back years later, it says it's a long time later, he has doubled his money. And when the rich man comes and gets that money, he says, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Wonderful. Excellent. The second man, the one who's got 2 bags, he also goes into business and he also doubles his money. And he also gets told, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. And we ask ourselves, is that fair? Because I wonder if the man who's generated 5 bags of cash goes, hang on, that's exactly what you said to me. And you're rewarding him in the same way as me. The reward I'm getting is the same as the reward he's getting. But I got 5 bags of money, not 2. And then the guy with the 2 bags might say, yeah, but you doubled your money, I doubled my money, so we're the same. That's fair. And then the guy with 5 bags might say, yeah, but you didn't have the responsibility. I was under more pressure. You guys, you only had 3 bags between you. I had almost double what you had to start with. The pressure on me. And, I mean, there could have been an argument. Having said that, there probably wasn't, because it's a parable, so it never happened. But you know what I mean? It could have happened. We start arguing, is it fair or not fair? Depends on your point of view. Let's get on to the last guy. The man who had 1 bag of money, he buries the money in the ground. Not a clever thing to do, not a very safe thing to do. And he achieves precisely nothing. And when the rich man comes back and the guy digs out the money, well, of course, the rich guy is angry with him. He says, at the very least, you could have put that in the bank and at least I'd have got interest on it. But I haven't even got any interest on the money. So that is dreadful, the way that you have behaved. And it's interesting because the guy, the servant, blames it on the rich man. He says, look, the reason that I did this, the reason I just buried the money, is because you're such a tough businessman. You work so hard in business and you're so desperate for a profit that I got scared. So frankly, it's your management style. If you had a better management style, if you managed me better, I would have had a better result. Harking back to last week, he doesn't say, I've done wrong, I accept full responsibility. Is there anything I can do to put this right? He tries to shift the blame. So, what happens to this man who's achieved nothing, not even done the basics, and tried to blame it on the master? He gets kicked out. He gets kicked out of the place where they live, and the rich man says, take the 1 bag and give it to the man who has 10. And you try to work out who had 10, don't you? Remember, one had 5, and he doubled it, so now he's got 10. So take that 1 bag, give it to the man who had 10. Is that fair? Is it fair that the guy who messed up, there were consequences and he got kicked out? Is it fair? Does the guy with 2 bags go, whoa? Why is the 1 bag going to him? Why don't we split it in half and he gets half a bag and I get half a bag? Is it fair? Who knows? But life isn't fair. But what we do see in this story is that there are consequences depending on how you respond. Life's not fair, but you can control your response. We're talking about this in terms of the fact that you are a leader, you are an influencer. And to kind of go back over some of the things that we've said previously, your direction determines your destination. So as a leader, as someone who has got certain resources, like the bags of money, there's an expectation from God that you will take responsibility and you will be sensible with what you've got and you will use it for good. And by doing that, you will set a good direction. But you're not in control of what happens. You can't go through life thinking nothing's going to go wrong because I've chosen the right direction, I'm trying to do the right thing, God's on my side, so nothing will go wrong. Sadly, life's not fair. Sometimes things will go wrong, but what you do is you choose your response. And in choosing your response, you have a huge influence on those around you. When they see the way that you respond to the problem, to the difficulty, then you influence people. And if you're going in a good direction, you will find other people will choose to copy you. They will follow your example. So that's why it's really important that we choose a good response. So let me talk about 4 things that you can do to respond. They're going to be quite general, because obviously I don't know the situation that you're in, but 4 things that you can be doing, should be doing, to respond. Number 1, be there. Be there. At home, say, be there. I'd tell you to do it here, but we're not supposed to be talking. I want you to remember that. Be there. Influence by being present. Influence by the fact that you are there. You do not influence somebody if you are not present in some way. If someone's in difficulty, if someone's in hardship, one of the questions you need to ask yourself is, where should I be? Be there. Your very presence influences what happens. The way people behave might be different because you are there. And if you're not there, how are you going to encourage? How are you going to give wisdom? Now, being there doesn't mean necessarily physically present. In these days, we've got all kinds of electronic communications and social media, so that can be a way of being with the person when you can't be there physically. But it's also important, if we can, to be there physically. Easy to say in these days of pandemic, and I'm not trying to put a guilt trip on those of you who are watching this from home. But when we come out of this pandemic, can you be there, literally be there for people? Second thing, in word. So be there, but be there in word. Influence by what you say. What you say to yourself in a difficult situation is really important. The way you respond is often determined by what you start saying to yourself. The way that you influence other people is what you say to them. Your words are very important. Are you going to be positive or negative? Because to be honest, you've got a choice. In any situation, you can think to yourself, am I going to say a positive thing or a negative thing? Am I going to look for the best or am I going to look for the worst? Do I think the glass is half full or do I think the glass is half empty? And it's not about what your natural tendency is. Because me, I am naturally very much a pessimist. I am very much a critical person, a critical thinker. If somebody comes to me and says, would you say that glass is half full or half empty? I will say, is that the best glass you could find? Can't we get a better glass than that? I think there's something, look, there's a chip on that, and yeah, I've got, it's not clear. I just look at something, and my instinct is to start trying to work out what could be better about it. What's wrong with it, and what could be better? So I have to make a deliberate decision to think, hang on, don't go with what my instinct is. I have a choice. I can choose my response. When I feel negative, I can choose whether I stay negative or not. Am I going to talk it up or am I going to talk it down? Am I going to build somebody up with my words? Am I going to tear them down with my words? Words are important. So be there in word. And the third thing is, and deed. Be there in word and deed. In other words, influence by what you do. You see, words are good. Words are often the starting point, because unless you're speaking positively, you're very unlikely to act positively. But as we were singing, well, we weren't singing, as we were listening to the song and we worshipped earlier, the bridge of that song, Unbroken Praise, says, let my deeds outrun my words. Your words can only get you so far. You need actions. It says, let my life outweigh my songs. It is brilliant to connect with God, to worship God through songs, through other means, but our life has to be more than songs. We need to be there in word and in our actions and in what we do. It's no good if you're just watching. If you're just a spectator and not participating. That's true at home when you are engaged in this service. If you're watching it purely as a spectator, that's different to if you're engaging with it as a participant. In life, all the things that go on, are you just watching or are you engaged? Are you doing? I don't mind doing work. I don't mind doing odd jobs. I don't mind doing housework. I don't mind, I do loads of the ironing in our house and stuff like that. Got no problem with that whatsoever. I bet you don't either. Maybe you do. But you know what I sometimes feel a bit funny about? It's when I'm working and everybody's watching. Have you ever been in that situation? When you're doing something, you're trying to achieve something, and everybody just watches you. Have you seen where somebody's stacking chairs or trying to pick up something, and everybody just stands around watching? It's really unhelpful when you just watch. It's worse than if you weren't there, but to stand there and watch and do nothing, that has a powerful influence on people. So don't just watch, don't just be a spectator. Think, how can I respond to this situation? What will I do? So your first three things on your response ability. Choose how you're going to respond by your location, where you are. Choose how you're going to respond by your words. What are you going to say, positive or negative? And choose how you're going to respond by your deeds, by your actions. What are you going to do? Be there in word and deed. And then the last thing I want to talk about in responsibility is, and learn from mistakes. Because I don't want to stand here in front of you and say, oh, I'm some great leader. I've learned these leadership lessons. So I respond by being there in word and deed, and then everything works perfectly. Because it doesn't. I still make mistakes. You still make mistakes. How do you respond when you make a mistake? Do you say, well, I'm never going to try and help again? That blew up in my face, didn't it? I'm never going to try and be nice again. I'm never going to speak positively again. I'm never going to try and support anybody again because I tried and it didn't work. I'm never going to try and do that for God again because I tried and it didn't work. Whatever you try and it doesn't come out the way that you hope or the way that you want, well, it doesn't mean you never do it again. It means you learn from your mistakes. And actually, this is at the heart of us as Christians. You can probably think back to things where you responded badly, where you got angry, where you said something that you shouldn't have said, where you did something that you shouldn't have done. And you might be living with that regret. You might actually be living out the consequences of a decision where you did the wrong thing. You had a choice to make, and the choice that you made turned out to be the wrong one. And it would be lovely if you could go back and change what had happened, but often that is not possible. And you might say, it's not fair. If I'd known it was going to work out this way, I'd have made a different choice. It's not fair that I can't go back and make a different choice. Life's not fair. But what you can control is how you respond today. Whatever situation you find yourself in, however positive, however negative, how do you respond today?